Okay. Speak like this.
Okay, Jordan Wolf.
All right. Hey, everyone. This is Jordan, founder of Cultured Supply. I'm here with Joey, the founder of Veshin Manufacturing. And so we had a previous conversation where we went into Joey's background, why he started Veshin. That's kind of part one of the conversation. Part two is going to be we're going to talk a little bit about how we met and the service that we recently partnered up to offer together, a product design and manufacturing service specifically for creators. So um, I'll just kind of preface it a little bit here in the setup of how Joey and I met. So for the past 4 years, I've been a more or less full-time angel investor, and I was largely in what I call changing the way that we make stuff. And so working with a lot of early stage companies and technologies, making bio-based chemicals, materials, ingredients, and products. So making things without a bunch of petroleum and nasty chemicals is the goal. And it was actually at a conference that Joey and I met. And as we discussed in the first part, Joey was one of the first people that really jumped into this kind of next generation materials space and wanted to become the go-to place for commercial production of products with it. And so we started having a conversation around a lot of the challenges in the space that we saw, especially around distribution. And Joey and I both saw a similar thing, which was many of these suppliers and companies that are inventing these new materials and coatings and all types of interesting things in the physical world. They were struggling with distribution. Largely, they were working with large corporates, especially in fashion and apparel and other other industries that their products are for. They had to go through this traditional wholesale distribution model, which is really challenging from a margin perspective. And a lot of these next gen materials are just really expensive still and are difficult to get into market at a price point that these large corporations need or want. And so it was through that was a problem that I saw from the startup standpoint. And as I started spending more time in the creator economy and the creator space, and where the world is going around discovery of products that people can trust, of what's inside them, where they come from, and who's involved with making them, I landed on. I thought there was a very interesting opportunity in servicing creators specifically with a focus on these next gen materials and getting those products designed and manufactured direct from the factory. So, sorry, that's long-winded way of saying that's how we arrived here. So, Joey, do you have anything else that you want to kind of add to that from your perspective of when we first met and how this conversation started?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. And for me, it was I was stuck in that situation where we were trying to find the unlock from a distribution perspective. Um, and in the past couple of years, one of our biggest customers was a social media influencer. And we started saying to ourselves, we are traditionally built for the fashion industry, but we started saying, well, is there another opportunity outside of the traditional brand for us to kind of see growth in? And we started looking at this previous customer of ours, and that was quite successful with good volume and good mindset and very fast product. And they were pretty much just going direct. And we said to ourselves, how can we find more opportunities like that? And that's kind of where I got stuck. And then we had this kind of idea of kind of trying to manifest and find these new types of influencers. And then we met in Paris, and you started talking about it, and then that's kind of where you mentioned about distribution and creators, and I was like, well, this is the kind of the guy I was looking for to kind of support us on this new project and this new vision, and we kind of saw eye to eye, and here we are now talking about it and excited for the next steps and who's out there to join us on this journey.
Cool. All right, so let's let's dive into it more specifically. Of I always like to go, okay, well, what are we doing that's fundamentally different than any other design or manufacturing service? So I think the first thing that we should talk a little bit about is products. So like, what is it? What are the types of products that we make? So Joey, do you want to kind of just give a high level overview of the categories of products that are really in our bailiwick?
Sure. So the Venetian factories operational across 4 countries: Italy, China, Colombia, and Brazil. Um, Originally, we start off in China, and China is where we step into the luxury sector, so mostly luxury handbags, um, and wallets, purses, that kind of stuff. In Colombia, we get into the high end miscellaneous areas, so especially in the sporting sector, hospitality, pet accessories, belts. Brazil is where we get into footwear, so it's exclusively, specifically only footwear. And then Italy is a slightly different model. It's a social enterprise, so we're working with refugees and asylum seekers from Africa, giving them a livelihood in Italy through manufacturing of smaller accessories. So that's kind of what we do. We don't get into the world of clothing just yet. We're pretty much accessories focused.
Yep. And one of the things I'll add here, which is like two, like there's a big distinction here. And I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant, but I think it's really important, I think, for everyone to hear this is um, we all see this kind of beginning of celebrities launching products and creators launching a variety of products. And, we have deep belief that this is like actually just the beginning. There's going to be a whole huge sea change in how brands are built. But like bigger picture, but one of the issues that I see is people think just because a celebrity or a creator is behind a product, it's going to work or it's going to be successful. And this is kind of how we think about the world, is like products in two separate categories. So we kind of put merch, which is just very commoditized products. That's fine if people want to do that, but that's something that's like really hard from a differentiation standpoint. And then we have like true product development. So actually inventing or creating the best product that's on the market. And a lot of times with us, it's using a lot of forward thinking materials. And those are two very different things from a product development standpoint, but really important because I always say that, in today's world, creators equal culture. They shape culture, and they shape culture and trends very quickly. And so you can't ignore that. But that doesn't translate into like having a product that's successful, or a business or a brand that's successful over the long term. You actually need to have a badass product, and to actually compete at a time where consumers have endless choice of product. And so I just think it's like really important, because one of the first things that Joey and I spoke about, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Joey, on the design side at the very beginning, which caught my eye around, hey, this could be interesting, is the very strong focus on product design. And so why we think the creator is so unique in many different respective categories is because typically, depending on their theme or what they're into, they are typically using a specific type of product or reviewing all types of products. So they actually know in their respective areas. So let's just say if a creator is focused on tech accessories and they're reviewing it every day, they're going to know what the best backpack is to handle tech accessories. And because they've tried everything and they know what their audience wants. And so it's a really important distinction for us, that this is not just like, yes, if you just want standard white label products, of course we can do that. But like ultimately, that's not going to create game changing or industry leading brands. And so, Joey, can you just talk a little bit because I think this is one of the unique aspects of what we do, is the role of product design and how it's integrated into the manufacturing process.
Sure. So predominantly factories today, they specialize in making, manufacturing. Where we are very different is that pretty much all the owners of the factories that we work with, especially in Colombia and China, we all come from a design background. So I'm an industrial designer by trade. Practiced design for almost 5 years before quitting and starting manufacturing. The reason why I quit as a designer was that, from an innovation perspective, there just wasn't any more I could do from an innovation perspective of materials to create more accessories. And I wanted to put all my kind of sustainable knowledge and innovation into manufacturing, giving customers the best place to create innovative product. My partners in China all come from design backgrounds. So what we can do is we can really accommodate quite technical designs and problem solving and troubleshooting. And that's kind of what's kind of set us apart to other standard manufacturing is the ability for us to really take on unique projects and problem solve for the customer. We've seen so much strength in that recently. Now we brought in-house our own industrial designer from Shanghai. So he's specifically focusing on that tech pack side of things and the design with the customer before the production has even started. And it's the same in Colombia as well. Someone might come to us without a design background and say, hey, I want to do this. I want to do it slightly differently. Can you give us some ideas? We can go into that kind of design visualization process. So before even production has started, we kind of create this whole complete package for the customer from design, then into sourcing and into production. So we really separate ourselves from other manufacturers by having this in-house design capabilities.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that's very interesting, beyond owning some of the factories, which we are the factory, is the designers work inside of them, and so I think that's like a really important distinction when it comes down to actually making something. Obviously, so second item is materials. So I think one of the most interesting aspects of the materials space is currently today there's a lot of companies and startups working on new novel materials, everything from alternative leathers without any animal product inside of it, bio-based polyurethanes, like you can get, the list goes on and on and on, where folks are trying to get look at different alternative forms of production without using traditional land-based agriculture with animals and petroleum inside the products, just so it's better for humans, better for the planet. And so what's interesting though about those is most of them are just kind of starting to cross the chasm, or at the beginning of crossing the chasm for being ready to be used for commercial production. And one of the things that stood out to me and how Joey and I initially met was knowing most of these innovators and people that are actually inventing these materials and working with the materials early on, because you have to have very specific know-how when it comes to making these products to know, because there's very strong capabilities of them, but there's also some negative aspects to them. But the point is we have 20 material suppliers, 20 core next-gen material suppliers in our network, doing everything from mycelium-based leather, cactus leather, variety of plant-based fabrics, and then also your more traditional recycled nylon, recycled PU. These are more common materials used in different products today. But so, Joe, can you talk a little bit about, we always talk about this idea of just being very straightforward when it comes to the word sustainability and no greenwashing. So can you just kind of just talk for a minute or two on kind of that and kind of how we approach that? Not using it like being true to our word and not using the word sustainability just to use the word sustainability.
Yeah, so sustainability is just becoming more complicated the longer we continue to live our lives, and the more complicated it becomes, the more meaningless the word becomes. And that's why for Veshin, we've always focused on being conscious first, and being conscious is being progressive. When you're conscious, you start to become aware of like not kind of throwing these words out and becoming more honest about your journey. And that's kind of where Cultured Supply and Jordan and I hit off, because we both were kind of seeing things from a holistic higher state. So for us, the key word is being progressive, sustainably progressive, and also looking into the circular economy. So how can we move from a linear manufacturing model into circularity? And that comes through these materials. So in addition to having all the design and being innovative and offering this aspect of the business, we wanted to start implementing these incredible new materials. And for me as a designer, again, one of the reasons why I quit designing and working for a brand was that the material solutions out there were just not innovative enough or sustainably progressive. And for us at Veshin, what I wanted to do was find these incredible new materials out there and start to scale them, because this is what I believe in long term, because these materials ultimately will lead to a future of circular product. So product that's able to break down, either biodegrade, compost, or be repaired. And that's kind of that's been our approach now. So it's a long journey, but instead of waiting for the materials to be ready, we've come in now to really kind of support them with R&D, specialize in understanding how to master the materials to create long-lasting product. And back to sustainability, the key right now is longevity. So the key right now is to have product that's lasting for a long time. The next phase of that, which I'm focusing on right now, but the brands don't need to necessarily be thinking about it, is the circularity, is what's happening next from a biodegradability, compostable perspective. And that's where we're looking now into not just the next gen materials, but the threads, the glues, all the other components that go into a bag. Can we start creating white label products where brands can start adopting them and then having the circularity story? So it's a long journey, but that's the role that we take, and all we can try and do is be pioneer and be thought leaders and the visionaries to try and create those solutions for then the brands to follow and adopt through our manufacturing philosophy.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You kind of bring up the concept of brands, and I think this is what gets me specifically excited about what we're doing, which is I just think the next big brand, like the next major brands, are going to be have creators going to be heavily involved with creating those brands in their respective categories. And I think one of the things that we've seen is, when you're working with a large corporation or a large brand that has all these rules and regulations and QA processes, and the list goes on and on and on, and they focus on distributing their product through wholesale distributors and the whole like old school way of doing things. It just doesn't work for a lot of these new materials. And what we've seen is, if you can find specific niches or specific areas to get these products directly into the hands of the consumers, and obviously creators are very well positioned to do that, that becomes very compelling. But one of the things for us, which is like, okay, that's great, but the thing for us, and this is kind of a lead into our values piece, is how can we do that in a much more transparent, direct way, so the actual production of the product is a part of the story and is part of the brand, right? And so when I think about like why folks are looking to creators in independent media, it's because that's who they're increasingly have trust in. And so I think our whole approach around more transparent manufacturing direct from the factory really lends itself well to like what creators ultimately want, which is to be completely like to be open and honest about where their products come from, who's involved with making it, and what's inside them. Like, and it's a really, really important point. So Joey, can you just kind of talk a couple minutes about, we call it kind of this conscious manufacturing framework, but I don't know, just I don't know, riff a little bit on values or what's important to you, because that is like at the end of the day who we are, and it's really important for people to understand if they want to work with us.
So when we started the company, we were like, how do we position our values? What is Veshin? I'll be a sustainable factory. I'll be like an ethical factory. I'll be a factory specializing in next gen. Like, what do we want to be? And through meditation and practicing raising consciousness within myself, I started to read and understand that all these good values in life, they all come from one bigger thing, which is the tree of consciousness. And then from that tree of consciousness, you get these branches that come from that. And for me at Vishin, those branches are like sustainability is a branch being a value, sustainability, transparency, working with next gen materials, giving back, being giving back with our revenue streams where we can, to either like beach conservation or an orphanage that we're doing right now in China. And lastly, the fifth value is raising consciousness through just being a better person, love, operating with peace, harmony, trying to implement that into the business. And as a result of doing that, those branches come as a result of that. So we talked about sustainability, we talked about next gen materials. It's the transparency part and the giving back part that we haven't talked about, and giving back I'll touch on at the end. But the transparency part was, for me, again, this whole thing started as a designer for me. When I was working in Vietnam and China, I was meeting good factories. I was meeting factories that were innovative and trying to be bit more forward thinking in their mindset. But the way they went about showcasing that, they just weren't very good at it. They weren't very good at providing the solutions to the brands for the brand to give to their customer to show, hey, this is what made in China looks like. And they didn't understand that the stigma against manufacturing, whereas being kind of a Western face, we are raised to understand that like made in China is bad. So through radical transparency, we wanted to make sure that the customer and the brands and whoever's part of this journey is getting full transparency into what Vishin is. So that's just going above and beyond certifications, because certifications today are becoming so confusing where we're watching these shows like what's the show? One about the oceans. I forgot the name of it now. What was that?
About how the world's ending, or
What's the Seaspiracy? Seaspiracy, for example.
Seaspiracy.
And they got like dolphin-free tuna, and it's like, what the hell does that mean? And they completely debunk dolphin-free tuna on the show, where the guy's like, I don't know if this dolphin's going into it or not, but we got the certification on the label. That's exactly the problem right now, is that people can't even trust the certifications. So at Vishin, we're trying to go above and beyond that through just being radical and transparent, and me being at the factories, having that raw content. And people now want to start seeing a more human connection. And this is where the influencers, this is what they're doing in their day-to-day life, whereas brands aren't. Brands, especially in the luxury sector, have become so gigantic with their name, but we don't know who's even behind a Louis Vuitton anymore. We don't know who's behind Chanel. Like, whereas you start looking at influencers, you know who's behind it. You're looking into the guy's eyes, the person speaking. If you don't trust him, as a human being, you're going to go, okay, I don't really relate to that person. I don't like the words coming out of his mouth. I'm going to choose to follow someone else. But at least you're getting that decision and that option to say who you want to follow. And that's the same with us at Vishin. Rather than having all these certifications and confusing people, you can just trust us. If you don't like it, I understand you might want to go somewhere else. But what we try and do is give you that trust and that belief and that honesty. And right now, that's one of the strengths of our business, is that people understand the journey that we're on. They understand who I am. They're buying into me as an owner because they want to just basically support the human aspect rather than just like the tick boxing exercise that certification brings. So with our new model, speaking to influencers and celebrities, you're really removing all these labels and all the middlemen in between and all the confusion. And back to our whole philosophy of going direct, you're going direct to the factory. You're going direct to the production floor. You can see it how it is. If you have a question for us, you ask us, and within 24 hours or even an hour, if we're at the factory, you'll get a picture of what you want to see. There's nothing to hide. And that's the beauty of what we're doing. And that's where celebrities and influencers can really support this narrative that we're working on.
Yeah, I think you hit on something really, I think that I nerd out about. Hence going the channel going direct, which is, you know, the whole rise of kind of all these direct to consumer brands over the past decade, and obviously that whole world's changing for a variety of reasons, but still like the ability to get distribution at scale direct to your audience, which never existed, before, is super, super exciting. And I think the part of the puzzle that we want to solve is kind of the other side of the coin. So kind of the distribution side, people are starting to play around with. Those pipes have really opened up thanks to creators, independent media, and the internet. What hasn't really been touched yet is the production side of the equation. And I think that was the whole kind of vision for myself and Joey to come together and say, well, if you can actually go direct from the factory all the way to direct your customer with the least amount of people in between, and bypass wholesale distribution, that is really, really interesting. That is like actually what can change markets. That is what can actually bring a much more distributed approach to manufacturing. The main issue that we see working with large brands and how they get their products out to market is, they're all based on this outdated last industrial revolution in these large centralized production models. And so all the distribution infrastructure and the markets and the supply chains have been set up that way. And in a weird way, I look at it as we've almost been forced to like look at alternative ways because our roots came from the next gen material space, right? Where it's like we actually don't have the ability because we can't even make the numbers work, and no one can make the numbers work by going through wholesale distribution. Mm-hmm. So we almost like landed on this. It's been really interesting. Landed on this by accident. Not by accident, I should say, but like by being restricted, it forces you to look to other ways.
Exactly.
So,
it's just turning in a different direction. We spent years and years and years trying to cater for the luxury fashion sector, and we're like, why does no one give a shit? Like, why is no one waking up? These amazing materials and more transparent manufacturing, and then you start to realize you peel back a few layers in those companies, and it becomes so technical and so complicated, and so many shareholders and boards. Whereas, again, back to the beauty of this new philosophy and model, you're going direct to the person who's at the top of that organization, who's on the Instagram, who's on the Facebook, who's speaking directly to their person, and that person's speaking directly to us. There's no middleman, and it's exciting what's going to happen next.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk a little bit about our factories, because obviously that's where the rubber meets the road and the most interesting part. So, we, as Joey mentioned, we have 4 factories: China, Italy, Brazil, Colombia, and we own the factory in China, and then the other 3 factories are currently we have a partnership model with them, so we do not currently own those factories. And the plan is over time to, as we build this, then potentially to look at potentially having ownership stakes in additional factories that really match our values. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, so like how the Veshin model worked was originally we started in China with the goal of transitioning a pre-existing luxury leather goods factory to a solely next generation non-leather operation. My partners brought me in as a shareholder straight away. And that's kind of how it worked. It was as simple as that. A pre-existing leather factory, pushing out leather from the inside with everything that we talked about today: new materials, better clients, more transparency. When it came to scaling overseas, I didn't want Veshin to be seen as a Chinese company. I wanted to be seen as a global business because I believe in localization of product or production. I don't believe in that everything needs to come from China. I understand the catch-22s, especially with when Trump came in and there was the tariffs and things in China became very complicated. It pushed me in a different direction to really look into what can happen overseas. That's when I approached Latin America. And there was 2 ways to expand Veshin overseas. There was one, take investment and build factories from the ground up in new countries, or there was find pre-existing value-aligned partners who are doing the right thing, but they don't know how to do it publicly, that they don't have access to this level of innovation, this level of sustainability knowledge. And what I noticed was, after trying to go down the investment route, that was like a 4 to 10 year plan. Like, taking investment is extremely time consuming. The next phase of doing that and building the factory and bringing in like a Spanish speaking workforce, extremely complicated. It was all possible, but it takes time. In the spirit of collaboration, which is a huge belief in me, is that I wanted to collaborate with pre-existing partners to make them better. So that's kind of the approach we took for scaling Veshin overseas. So starting in Colombia, then Italy, then Brazil. And I'm happy I can just dive a bit more into explaining each factory, and then I'll finish on China. So Italy, I've already spoken about. We're a social enterprise. So it's a very different manufacturing model. It's a manufacturing model that's really looking to give back to the human side of production. So working with refugees and asylum seekers from Africa or other parts of the world and giving them a life in Italy, setting them up for success long term so their families can relocate to Italy with them. And that's all supported through this manufacturing model just outside of Bologna. So taking a next-gen material and creating some more accessories. And that money that we get through those productions is supporting the social enterprise and able to support these this workforce and creating these new lives for themselves. In Brazil, that's our footwear manufacturing. In Brazil, the reason for Brazil was that I met a brand a few years ago based out in New York, and they're working with this amazing footwear supplier. And they said, "Hey, you should really speak to this guy. He is like the Veshin version of footwear." And I was like, "Wow, there's someone else out there doing to me." And I was like, "Well, rather than compete against the guy, I was like, well, let's collaborate with him. Let's go on this journey together." We hit it off quite quickly through Zoom calls. I met his father in Las Vegas, and then being in Colombia, it was quite an easy flight to get to Brazil. And then I met with Gabriel in Brazil, and Himsma, who is our Brazilian manufacturing partner, they've been vegan from the get-go. So they haven't worked with any leather, any animal materials. They've had a focus on alternatives, and they're very innovative in their mindset. They're very strong in R&D. So they became a very strong partner for us very quickly. They are on this journey for the long haul, rather than coming in and expecting like revenue to start straight away. So that's our Brazilian partner. In Colombia, I wanted to get manufacturing into Latin America because of the US market. It's such a huge market for us. And again, with the complications of the Trump government and tariffs being raised and the friction between the US and China, but not just that, but the carbon footprint of going from one of our new materials that's based out of Illinois and going from Illinois to China and then back to San Francisco or New York, extremely long carbon footprint, extremely costly logistically. When you go to Latin America, either Costa Rica or Colombia, things become a lot quicker, a lot easier, a lot more cost effective. So I started in Costa Rica, wasn't able to do it in Costa Rica, moved to Colombia, tried in Medellin, and then we landed on our partner in Bogota. So our partner in Bogota, as I said, specializes in this high-end miscellaneous category with a huge focus on the sports world. And again, very value aligned. They are working predominantly with leather, but they have a huge enthusiasm for the world of next gen and very innovative, very progressive in their mindset, doing amazing things with their workforce. So they created an entire program for the deaf community within the factories. So they have a production line set up for deaf people. So very, very, very strong on the human side of things as well. Innovation comes in is now we can support them with bringing in these new materials, bringing in these new clients who are in the US, and cracking that code for Latin America. And then lastly, in China, which is our main operation, specializing in the high-end luxury sector. And China's kind of where we got our fame to date. And yeah, most recently we were recognized in the top 100 Vogue Business Innovators. And this is a really great recognition of where fashion is going and where the industry is going, because when it came to these kind of top 100s, factories were never kind of part of the conversation. It was always the brands, it was always the designers, it was always the material innovators recently. Factories never kind of got into that spotlight. And now with the work the Vogue business journalists are doing, they're bringing everyone into that conversation and the importance of everyone's role in the supply chain. So it's very new in the fashion industry to start seeing factories get this spotlight. So for us now, getting that spotlight is an indication of where things are going, that people are starting to trust the human part rather than saying this company's in top 100. They're highlighting the individuals behind those businesses. So again, it's becoming more human. It's becoming more transparent. People are believing in the person rather than the certification. And that's kind of where we're going in China. And as a result of all that, our model now is expanding into all areas of the world. We're looking into conversations and expanding into Europe. And then hopefully by 2030, we're going to have a presence in Africa, because Africa is the next biggest region for manufacturing. So exciting times.
Great.
And that's where we're going.
Great. Yeah, I think every, to hit on kind of many of these themes that you and I talk about like ad nauseum, it kind of comes back to this underlying, I guess, theme or mission of Going Direct, which is how do we make commerce more human, right? I think that's kind of, for me, why I wake up every day, and everything that I do is how do we actually make it more human centered. But I'm also like a realist. At the end of the day, consumers, they consume based upon price and convenience. That's the reality. we can have all of these, like all that, we can kumbaya as much as we want. But markets work how markets work. They're unforgiving. And so I always like to say, how can we utilize technology to make commerce more human? And I think it's for me, I don't know, I think a lot about it. We have all the tools today to do it. And I just think that we have to change our systems of production, right, to match this new way of thinking. And I think, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you are sitting halfway around the world, and you can dial someone up in HD and talk to them like they're next door. And so we have all the tools at our disposal. We just haven't changed our systems. And so I would say, I think part of our hope is we can use this in a very kind of bottoms up approaches to help kind of start to change some of our systems around this, and build it and help build the next big brands of the future, by going, direct to the factory, and obviously direct to the audience. So, all right, so let's I think we can wrap it up here, which is kind of more the practical thing is, how can folks work with us? So I'll just kind of give the quick overview, and then Joey, add anything else you want to it. So essentially, we basically have both product design and production, commercial production services. It's very straightforward. We typically do design work with the intention that we're going to produce the product. So we have a very simple menu of services around specific conceptual design packs, tech packs that you can hand off to the manufacturer, then actually manufacturing the product. And our team also helps on the import export. So we kind of help soup to nuts for the creators, because a lot of times we find that they don't have anyone in the supply chain side, they don't have any of the infrastructure, and so we want to kind of be the crutch for them to kind of give them everything they need around designing, making, and getting the product to them. And you can find more information on it at our website at culturedsupply.com. We have a basic intake form, and then we schedule an intro call, and it's pretty straightforward process from there. So anything else, Joey, that you want to add?
No, that's pretty much it. Just looking forward to who's listening, and get in touch, and hopefully we can do some wonderful things together.
Cool. All right, my man. Well, at this point, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you guys all on the other side.
Ciao, ciao. Peace.
Yeah.
2, 1, and go!